When Razer wants to go all out, boy do they go all out. This is the epitome of anything you could want in a dock. The Razer Thunderbolt 5 dock, Mercury Edition, which we'll address in a second. But before we talk about what this means, Mercury Edition, and all of the glory that is in here, let me first thank Razer for sending this unit for review for me to showcase for you guys. Now, of course, that has no impact on my opinions, no money changed hands, and they do see the video at the same time as everybody else. You already know by how I introduced this thing that I'm excited. But make no mistakes, this does not come cheap. We're talking about $400 for the black and RGB model. If you go for the Mercury Edition, it doesn't have RGB, and that one is silver. It's a more discreet option, but it's really the only difference between the two colors. One has RGB, the other hasn't. Here we have the front of the box, the back of the box listing some specs. And once you open it, you are greeted by this beauty, which looks phenomenal with this little sheen, and you have the Razer logo on top. There doesn't seem to be anything at the front. You do have a sticker. This is something I could remove, but I'm going to leave it on for now. Airflow fin here and another there, so I would assume one is intake, one is outtake. In the back, you have ports. We'll get back to that. At the bottom, a door to be able to install up to a 2280 M.2 SSD drive, pre-layered with heat pads. Now, I'm mainly going to be using mine on a Mac, but this would also work for Windows. In fact, some of the features are going to be Windows specific, which we'll get back to that. Starting with the Ethernet port, we have a 1 GB rated Ethernet port. We have 3 downstream USB-Cs and 1 upstream USB-C. And what this means, and all 4 are Thunderbolt 5, by the way. Now, this is where you would want to plug your Mac, MacBook, laptop, PC, and this is where you'd want to plug a monitor, a portable monitor, XR glasses. Essentially, you can think of it this way. This is where the data comes in. However, it will deliver power to a laptop up to 140 watts. And this will deliver power and data to a screen, a monitor, or one of these ports could also be used to connect to another computer by using Intel's Thunderbolt Share. In a nutshell, it's a KVM, so if you're familiar with that, it is to have your keyboard and mouse on one dock and being able to swap your inputs from one computer to another. But on top of that, it also does that for monitors as well. This is really a KVM on steroids because it does that through one cable. Old school KVMs sometimes came with HDMI switcher and older cables like a VGA cable switcher. This will do it all through the USB-C port. On top of that, it will also support file transfer. It really connects two computers, such a killer feature if you're running multiple systems. This is definitely something I'm going to leverage down the road. We have a DC barrel jack that delivers up to 250 watt. This can power up to 3 monitors. This can power up a laptop. It's gonna need a lot of juice, so up to 250 watt through the barrel jack. 2 USB-As rated at 3.2 Gen 2. We have a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2. We'll see if video out is supported here as it is on the other ports. I would assume it isn't, but we'll test just to be sure. A 3.5mm jack that supports audio and microphone, also supports digital surround sound up to 7.1. If you have a device compatible with a digital 3.5mm jack, that would work for surround sound as well. And then last but not least, for all my creators out there, this is a SD UHS-2 slot. If you use cameras or if you use high transfer SD cards, you'll know that this is a super important port to have, and this dock supports the full UHS-2 protocol. With this covered, let's go through the rest of the box. We have a note from the CEO saying that this dock is how you complete your setup, and I would tend to agree because it has so many ports. The power cable, a brick is about to unveil itself. 250 watt, that's a big brick. 20 volt, 12.5 amp, 250 watt total. That's a lot. You know, you're basically having a gaming laptop brick here. A Thunderbolt 5 rated cable, which matches the color of the dock and seems to be, I want to say, about a meter long, give or take. Before we go ahead and plug everything, let me run through a couple more things when talking about the dock. If you use these all 3 cables, you can support up to 3 monitors at up to 4K at 144 Hz each, but you could also power one 8K at 60 Hz. You have a bunch of options here, but you'll have 3 monitors total, as long as the laptop on the other end or the PC on the other end has a Thunderbolt 5 supported port. If you put this through a Thunderbolt 4, because it doesn't support the same bandwidth, you may not get the same resolution and the same speeds. The other ports here would be used for your keyboard, your mouse, a game controller, maybe you have a flash drive, other peripherals. Essentially, that's where you'll want to plug them. When it comes to the M.2, it will support PCIe Gen 4 speeds, 4x4 lanes. The speed goes, you're gonna have plenty with this port. I did try to install a 990 Pro with the Shield installed on the SSD drive, and it didn't go through. So I ultimately ended up taking out the Shield, and that was fine. But just so you know, if you're hoping to install something with a Shield, it may not fit because it's a very, very tight clearing that you have. Technically, you could install a smaller drive, either a 2230 or a 2242, but there are no standoff posts, so your mileage may vary, especially if you're going to be moving the dock a whole lot. It could get undone and potentially damage something internally. I would advise against it, but for all intents and purposes, it should work. And while this is not the drive I ended up using for my tests, it also worked perfectly fine with the B+M key. In terms of older drive compatibility, that should work fine with the socket that is on the Thunderbolt 5 dock. So maybe the first con, I mean, I wouldn't call it a con, but maybe something that may disappoint a couple of people is that nowadays you're starting to get a lot of computers and laptops that comes with a 2.5 gigabyte port. Unfortunately, this does not support that. It goes up to 1 gigabyte, but considering everything else that it does, honestly, that's something I'm not too concerned with. All right, so let me go ahead and plug this with the laptop that I have that happens to be Thunderbolt 5 so I can start running some tests. While I didn't test it on my Mac Studio, I just wanted to showcase that the Mercury model almost matches one-to-one the look of a Mac Studio. It's not quite exactly the same. There's just a slight difference in the grittiness of the coating, but it's very, very close to one another. Even though this looks like this is 3 monitors, it's actually a 2-in-1 and another monitor, and everything that I'm going to be using for this test is being powered entirely through the dock. The MacBook Pro is powered through this one cable. This is one of the monitors and this is the other monitor, and you can see the micro SD. As you can see, there's really only one cable running through the MacBook, and when looking at this specific monitor, it's also being powered from the dock itself. Unfortunately, I didn't have a third monitor, but if I was to have an external power source, technically we could go up to 3 monitors as well. But this is something to keep in mind. If you're powering a portable monitor through the dock, you may not achieve the same amount of monitors connected to it. But at least with this setup, I was able to do a 3K resolution at 120 Hz, and the other monitor was a 1920 by 2160 at 100 Hz. And to spice things up, I decided to add my Samsung T7 Shield so that it is also connected through the dock and therefore connected to the MacBook. Let's run some speed tests on all of the drives. So the first thing I did was run an internal test with a 5 gigabyte file, just so that we have, you know, a baseline to work with. And through all the tests, I ran about 5. This is the best numbers I've achieved. Then running the SD with a 1 gigabyte file, because these are nowhere near as fast. I did forget to take a screenshot, silly old me, but you should be able to see the numbers, which is pretty much on par with UHS 2 speeds. As they say, so far so good. Let's move to the next device. And now running the Samsung T7 drive, and the performance is just as good as if I was plugging it directly to the laptop, so the dock is not hindering in any capacity the speeds that this drive can achieve. And I do want to stress the fact once again that while running these tests, everything is connected simultaneously through the dock. Some things are being powered, the laptop, one of the monitors, so it's really outputting a lot of power and a lot of data, and yet everything is just smooth sailing. Now what you see, believe it or not, it happens to be the internal drive, not on the MacBook, but on the dock itself. So this is my 990 Pro that I ended up removing the shield from, and oh my god, look at this speed. It's so crazy wild. It's better than the internal speeds from the MacBook itself. And again, just to show you what you're seeing here, that little LED is where the cable is going through, because usually you can have one for power, one for signal, and I only have one that is connected with a cable at the moment, which is why you see one LED. If I had both, you'd see both LEDs. I am powering 2 screens while still running these tests, so the bandwidth is absolutely bonkers. And while it will not charge the MacBook, as in it will not increase the battery, it will keep it at 78. All those tests were run for about, I want to say 45 minutes, and I didn't lose a single percent. Now, when it comes to that, your mileage may vary a little bit, because as we speak, I still have a couple of ports that are not being used. I'm not using the 3.5mm jack, which would draw nothing. I'm not using the 2 USB-As, and I'm also not using the Ethernet port. So, you know, there's potentially more power that this dock could end up using, but with all that said, going with one cable through the MacBook, it's been pretty flawless. All right, let's move to the conclusion. So what's the takeaway? Number 1, I need to shave. Number 2, this thing is an absolute beast. And look, it's expensive. I can't deny that, but it is a very future-proof, basically no problems, no issues whatsoever kind of solution. Whether you're a gamer that is looking to extend your space and you have a Thunderbolt 5 or even Thunderbolt 4 port accessible, you can use that to have more ports, as well as have an SSD, basically anything you might need. This is also great for creators or people that are in a creative space, musicians, editors, filmmakers. Doesn't matter what kind of creativity that you're doing, this will come in clutch when you need ports and you need everything to go blazingly fast. Now, one thing to keep in mind, some docks you're also able to use without having power sent through the dock. So for example, you would have your Thunderbolt port from your laptop or from your PC fueling enough power so that you can have a flash drive or something like that. This will not do it. You absolutely need to be connected to the power brick, or at least in my testings, it didn't respond if I was going just through the Thunderbolt 5, hoping that some power would be acquired to run at least some of the ports. It didn't work for me. For example, you're thinking of putting this in a laptop bag and you want to pop it out while on the road. Yeah, forget about it. This is not that kind of solution. This is really for something stationary or someone that's on the move that will sit down and connect through a power source to be able to, you know, connect all the things that you may have to connect. I'm super impressed with this dock. Throughout the entire tests, not a single time I had a USB go bunkers or something disconnect or the power being adjusted on the fly. Whatever logic board that they have on this, it manages power and data with so much efficiency. I wouldn't be able to test every single scenario. The more power and the more data that you use through these docks, usually the more likely that you are to run into issues. I really put this thing through some pretty intense tests and nothing shut down. So I only have good things to say about this. Now, the one thing is it something that you will need? And that depends on you, especially on a laptop. I don't see how you wouldn't be able to take advantage of that. Now, to be fair, if you have a PC tower, most likely you won't make as much use out of this just because you already have more than enough port on a PC, but you may still want something like that because you want some flexibility or ease of access to some of the ports that you would otherwise have to open your tower for. That could be useful there. Specifically laptops. I think laptops are just Mac devices in general because they tend to have a lot less ports. These are, in my opinion, the areas where this shines. Now, last but not least, while this is mainly targeted for Mac OS and PC, if somehow you wanted to run a phone through this, especially an Android phone where you're probably going to have more OTG support, you could do that as well. You could also run that through an iPhone, USB-C capable. Now, of course, your mileage may vary, but it is still very much able to do this for these types of devices as well. don't think I can take this really much further. I've said everything I had to say. I think it is a phenomenal device and one I could easily have seen myself buy with my own money. Thankfully, Razer sent one. Again, thank you very much. The truth is, and I hope they don't mind me saying this, but we weren't even talking for this dock. They just were so confident in the product that they had in their hands. They asked if I wanted to review it, and ultimately I ended up accepting. And I'm glad I accepted, because 100% this is being used in my production. 100% this is being used in my everyday life. So this is a phenomenal dock that I would recommend for anyone looking for something like that. There it is, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, please consider hitting the like if you enjoyed this video, to drop a comment if you have any questions, and to subscribe to not miss any future content. I'm Clef. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.